Good afternoon, we are pleased to welcome you to our channel. Today, January 7th, as always, we begin our review of the operational situation over the past 24 hours. The Russian Federation continues to ignore the laws and customs of warfare, uses terror tactics, strikes, shelling of both military and civilian objects. The enemy is actively using tactical aviation and FPV quadricopters, conducting assault operations with the support of armored vehicles. The operational situation in the east and south of Ukraine remains difficult. During the day, 27 military clashes took place. In total, the enemy launched 8 missile and 55 airstrikes and 23 shellings from multiple rocket launchers on the positions of our troops and settlements. As a result of Russian terrorist attacks, unfortunately, there are dead and wounded among the civilian population. Private residential and apartment buildings and other civilian infrastructure have been destroyed and damaged. The operational situation in the Volyn and Polzy directions has not changed significantly. No signs of the formation of enemy offensive groups have been detected. Certain units of the armed forces of Belarus are carrying out tasks in the areas bordering Ukraine. On the Seversk and Slobozansky directions, the enemy maintains military presence in the border areas, conducts sabotage and reconnaissance activities, shells populated areas from the territory of the Russian Federation, increases the density of mine and explosive barriers along the state border of Ukraine. The enemy launched airstrikes in the areas of Oleksandrivka, Volchansk, Prikholatno and Chuganivka in Kharkiv region. About 70 settlements were subjected to artillery and mortar shelling by the enemy. In the Mariinka direction, the defense forces continued to hold back the enemy in the areas of Mariinka and Novomikhalovka, where the enemy, with the support of aircraft, tried to break through the defense of our troops 5 times. In the Lyman direction, the enemy did not conduct offensive actions. The enemy made airstrikes in the area of Serebryansky forestry of Lugansk region and in the areas of Terny and Spurnoy settlements of Donetsk region. More than 10 localities were hit by enemy artillery and mortar shelling. In the Bakhmut direction, the defense forces repelled an enemy attack near Kleshchevka. The enemy launched an airstrike near the settlement of New York. On the Avdiivka direction, our defenders repelled 5 enemy attacks in the areas of Novobamutovka, Stepnoy, Avdiivka, and 9 more attacks in the areas of Pervomayskoy and Nevelskoy of Donetsk region, where the enemy, with the support of aircraft, unsuccessfully tried to improve the tactical situation. Also, the enemy launched an airstrike in the area of Alexandropol settlement. The enemy did not conduct offensive actions in the Shakhtarsk direction. The enemy launched an airstrike near the locality of Staromayerskoy. On the Zaporizhia direction, the defense forces repulsed 2 enemy attacks in the areas of Robotino and south of Novodorovka, where the enemy, with the support of aircraft, tried to improve the tactical situation. The enemy launched airstrikes in the areas of Malaya Tokmachka and Pyadehatki, in the area of responsibility of the Odessa JMA in the Kherson direction. 7 localities were subjected to enemy artillery fire. The enemy does not give up its intention to knock out our units from the bridgeheads on the left bank of the Dnieper. Thus, during the day, the enemy made 18 unsuccessful assaults on the positions of our troops, but the Ukrainian soldiers continued to hold the occupied positions and inflict significant losses on the enemy. During the day, the aviation of the defense forces struck 19 areas of enemy personnel concentration. The missile troops hit 1 control point, 1 ammunition depot, 1 artillery vehicle, 1 air defense radar, and 1 Taurus SAM of the enemy. Yesterday, the Russians shelled Pokrovsk, Donetsk region, twice. It was recorded a hit in the administrative building, burning garage and cars, according to the data. As a result of the attack, 2 private houses were destroyed in Pokrovsk. Rescuers managed to extract a man from under the rubble of one of the destroyed houses, but 6 more people, including 2 children, are still missing. The village of Rivna also suffered. A private residential house, where 6 people lived, including 3 children, was completely destroyed. Earlier, the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, Andriy Yermak, reported 11 dead, including 5 children. As a result of this attack, the AFU hit the command center at the airfield of Saki in Crimea. This was announced by the commander of the Air Force, Mykola Olszczuk. Also was published a frame from the airfield, where there was a flight. Apparently, it was an airstrike. Olszczuk thanked the pilots for it. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on Western countries to hand over $300 billion of frozen Russian assets abroad to Ukraine. According to him, this would be a fair step that would make Russia pay for its aggression. Earlier, the media wrote that discussions on confiscation of frozen Russian assets have intensified in the West against the background of the fact that the allocation of 2 financial aid packages for Ukraine worth more than $110 billion has failed. The U.S. Congress failed to vote for the allocation of $60 billion, and Orban blocked the allocation of €50 billion of aid from the EU, and the confiscation of Russian assets is seen in the West as an alternative source of funding for aid to Ukraine. The media say that the U.S. is persistently pushing its European allies to take such a step. The lion's share of Russian assets is blocked just in the EU, but France, Italy and Germany are still cautious, fearing the severe consequences of asset confiscation for confidence in euro, as well as the retaliatory confiscation of European assets in Russia. In the morning, Russian forces dropped 2 aerial bombs on Pivnikno in the Donetsk region. A woman died, another was injured. About it reports the head of the Donetsk OVA Vadim Filishkin. In the morning the Russians dropped 2 aerial bombs on the settlement, hit 2 multi-story buildings. A 63-year-old woman died on the spot. A 79-year-old woman was wounded and taken to hospital, he wrote. 3 houses were partially destroyed. The Russian army releases in Ukraine 5 times more shells than the AFU. Such data quotes the Wall Street Journal. The Russian Federation today fires an average of 10,000 shells, and Ukraine 2,000, the publication reports with reference to the London-based Rusi Institute. This is the situation now, but in the summer, the ratio was in favor of the AFU. 7,000 shells against 5,000 from the Russian Federation. Apparently, this was due to the counteroffensive of Ukrainian forces in the south, which requires more shells. Closer to evening, the GSD published satellite images before and after the recent AFU strike on Crimea. It is claimed that ammunition depots near the village of Grishino and several radar stations at the airfield in Saki were hit. Spectator magazine published an interesting article. We can't help but share it with you. Ukraine is striving for the military goal of restoring the 1991 borders, but according to analysts, it is practically impossible. They believe that freezing the conflict on the existing front line is the only way to peace. NATO should not include Ukraine in its ranks, despite its aspirations. The author, Owen Matthews, expresses doubts as to whether the military regaining control of Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donbass, and Crimea will lead to improved security for the country. He also draws attention to the more than 130,000 mobilized men from Donbass who are fighting on the side of the enemy. Their loyalty to Ukraine is questionable due to years of armed clashes with Kiev. The researcher, drawing on his sources from uncontrolled areas of Donbass, notes a strong dislike for the idea of returning to Ukrainian rule. Support from the U.S. plays an important role in Ukraine's plans to regain control over the lost territories. However, as noted, the political climate in the United States is not necessarily favorable to the idea, creating additional difficulties for President Biden. The magazine concludes that under the current situation, recognizing the reality on the ground, maintaining a line of control with security for Kyiv without full NATO membership is the only real solution. Thank you all for watching this video. If you want to stay up to date and get the latest news, then subscribe to our channel and click on the bell so you don't miss new episodes.